All right, good morning, you guys. Diag, first thing in the morning. Check and report on gauge cluster needle fluctuating. Okay, so I am able to duplicate it. See if I can just do it. Oh, there we go. It did it. It did it. There we go. So that's the customer's complaint. And just messing around here. Like I want to turn on a radio, but the radio code, it needs a radio code. So what does that tell me? Is it because of a bad alternator? Because they put a new battery in it. So then, yeah, there you go. I did it again. Okay, so I actually found a use for this in the waveform part of this battery tester that I got. So it's just to monitor battery voltage. But looks like the original alternator down there with 171,000 kilometers, so roughly around 100,000 miles, just above 100,000 miles. So new battery, as you can see, but terminal's loose. So tighten down the terminals, and then yeah, I can already hear it beeping. So let me tighten that terminal. I think they bottomed it out to the point where you can't even tighten that terminal. So I'm gonna have to fix that and then actually tighten that terminal down. All right, so battery terminal's tight, nice and tight now. It's got one of those Moto Master batteries. Also, this is not even tight, so I gotta tighten this too. And then, is this even the right battery? Yeah, okay, let me just tighten these. See, I can even turn this by hand. Okay, so tighten that down. All right, so tighten those terminals, right? And oh, there you go. You see it? Do it again. So I'm gonna call the advisor and tell him to call the customer. Did it start happen to start doing this after replacing that battery? Because one, they could have, when they were, maybe the battery went dead and they had to jump start it, possibly jumped it backwards, or when they if the customer installed the battery, or the shop that they brought it to installed the battery, left the car running while installing that battery, so you don't lose the radio code and stuff, because I don't know if they have a radio code. I gotta check the glove box. Let me check the glove box and see. Is there anything? No sticker? No sticker in there. So those are the questions you gotta ask. No owner's manual, because usually they put it in there. In here maybe? No, that's just more junk at the top there. So these are the questions you got to ask the advisors, to ask the customer, because if the shop that installed the battery, installed the battery while the car was running, they could have, fried the cluster, because that battery is supposed to have a buffer for voltage spikes, and when there's no buffer or a battery to absorb those voltage spikes, where does those voltage spikes go to, right? It goes to your electronics, right? And they have to take it into the capacitors and everything. So yeah, those are the questions. So I'm just waiting for the advisors to get back at me, because if it did happen, or this started happening after they put the battery in, then possibly the shop that put the battery in is liable for this repair. So see what the advisor says. Okay, so while we're waiting, I might as well just do a system scan to see for codes. Yeah, it's even doing it with the key on. It doesn't seem very consistent, even if I tap on the gauge cluster. Yeah, it's just doing it pretty consistently. System scan. Okay, sometimes you just wanted to see, maybe some modules will tell you something for other modules, but this thing doesn't have a gauge control module. It's not part of it. So we got battery, low voltage, ECM, PCM relation failure, and then CAN relation failure. So I'm gonna print out a wiring diagram. We're gonna check powers and grounds to that gauge cluster and make sure everything is there before we make a call. Okay, so I removed the cluster, and it's pretty consistent. Like it's at a set amount of time for it to do this. So like, okay, so there's that. Yeah, did it in 11 seconds. So that's 10 seconds. So it's doing it every 10-second intervals. So actually, I kind of remember on the Honda Element, it kind of cuts out because of the connector. You wiggle the connector and it just dies out. So yeah, it's doing it in every 10-second intervals. Yeah, there you go. See, I'm watching the timer or the recording time on my phone, and it's doing it every 10-second intervals. So it's not like you hit it and it just goes away or comes and goes. It's a set interval. So I'm wiggling the connector in the back, and it's not doing anything. It's still doing that 10-second intervals that it does this. So yeah, but anyways, I remember seeing this on a Honda Element where it's just a loose connection, and it just, you know, all the gauges just go to zero, and you know, it doesn't do anything, and then it comes back. But yeah, anyways, let's see. Try the gauge control module, because you can do a self-test. There's also a beacon test I can also try. So function test, right? It does the yeah, so when it's beeping like that, it just can't do it. Maybe if I redo it before, after it does it. So it's done there. It's beeping. Yeah, no. It's in adjustments. Gauge control module replacement, maintenance reminder, PAX morning reset. Nope, that's not what I need to do. So it does all, you know, all the checks when I do that. But once it cuts out, it just cuts out with the HDS. So that's no help. So I want to do beacon control unit information. Check connected control modules. So if it doesn't detect it, there's the gauge control module, it detects it, so not available. Yeah, so okay, so from everything from what I'm seeing, also the advisor called me back of when this battery was put in. This battery was put in last year. It started happening in December, and it's been doing it since December. We're in April now, so that's January, February, March, April. That's like 4 months ago. So that's when it started happening. But from what I'm seeing is, it does it every 10-second intervals. No matter if I wiggle the connector or whatever, it does not change. So that's a known fact. Other than trying to do the gauge cluster test, right, where it does do it, and then once it cuts out, everything just starts all over again, right? So that doesn't really help in determining that issue, but it kind of gives you an idea of it's cutting power to it for some reason. And also when I do the beacon control units to check if it's detecting it, which it is, because you know everything's all on communication lines to get information from each module, right? So that everything's all, you know, detected, so it can talk to each other and stuff like that. So what I think is it because due to the loose battery terminal, you know, just making connections, because those causes voltage spikes, right? And is it because it messed with the gauge cluster? Because you know there are capacitors. Maybe something inside is shorted, and what it is doing is once it gets power, something heats up, and then it cuts power to it to protect it, and then basically shut everything down, and then resets itself. And that's my theory of the 10-second intervals, because it's probably because when you're key on, where's the key? Right. So this kind of information you can't really find in shop manuals. So, you know, gauge cluster, maybe it's a bad capacitor or something, I don't know. So what, see, there it goes. So now the next time it's going to do it is a 10-second interval. So is it just resetting itself because something internally in the cluster is an issue? Because, you know, maybe it's just something heats up and then it shuts that circuit down and then resets itself every 10 seconds because that's what it's doing. And yeah, looking at the wiring diagram, there's communication wire, there's a power and ground. Because if it's a power and ground issue, I don't think that will cause every 10-second interval for it to reset. So I have a feeling that it might be a cluster issue. So anyways, I will bring you back once we get a repair on this thing. Maybe I can open it up and take a look. Especially on a car that's, what is that, 2007? Yeah, how many years is that? That's 10, nope, can't do math right now. So 17 years old, right? And after 17 years old, all the, like, you know, you have capacitors in there. What if the capacitors in the cluster is leaking? So, and it's causing this issue. Maybe it's causing a short inside. If it leaked onto the circuit board and it's causing a short, and then what it's doing is that short is causing something to heat up and then just resetting itself every 10 seconds just to protect the cluster, or you know, catching on fire or whatever, right? So that's my theory, and I'm gonna go with that. So let me see what's gonna happen with this. I'm gonna pop this open and see if I notice anything, but I don't see anything. Neither do like the capacitors or anything are leaking or anything. These are just the motors for the gauges. So that's like your speedometer, tachometer, and then your fuel gauge and your temperature gauge. That's those guys. But I don't see anything popping out. But the back cover kind of looks kind of funky though. All those black marks. Probably all the dirt and stuff that's been blowing around inside. Okay, so I went to the parts department. So we can't actually get a new gauge cluster. They're discontinued. So we have to go to the used route. So I told the parts department to find a gauge cluster that's as close as to 178,000 kilometers as you can. Also, if I did get a new one, I would have to swap the odometer over with this. But since it is shutting itself off and turning it back on again, I don't think I'll be able to save, or it doesn't give enough time for the scanner to save the odometer and the maintenance once you go to adjustments, right? So you just go to gauge control module and you're supposed, it'll copy down the odometer and also the maintenance reminder, and then put it into the new one. But it doesn't stay on long enough before it resets itself for it for the scanner to be able to do that. Because when I did the function test, and then you go and check, yeah, it does the gauge thing, it won't do it because it just shuts itself off. So that's also an issue if you're going through the new gauge cluster. So gonna wait till the parts department quote out or if they can find a used gauge cluster, and then I'm gonna put it in. And what else I was gonna do? Yeah, I'll bring you guys back, and once I put that in, and then confirm that it's fixed. So yeah, I'll bring you guys back. Also, this car is gonna be staying here anyways, so it's gonna be waiting for the gauge cluster anyways. All right, so we are back. I think it's been like 5 days. 5 days since I looked at this. But yeah, we got a used one right here. I asked for if they can find one as close as the current mileage that's on the car. So it's been sitting here for a while. I wonder if it still does it. Also, it has 178,000 kilometers on the cluster. Oh, yeah, there you go. Doesn't take long for it to do it. So I'm gonna swap out this cluster, see if it fixes it, and if it fixes it, we know it has a bad cluster. I don't know. There's nothing else you can do. Check power, check grounds. That's not gonna do anything if it's something internally on the cluster that you can't really check. And plus, I took it apart to see if I see anything on the circuit board, but I don't really see anything. So yeah. Anyways, I'm gonna get this thing swapped out with the used one here, and then see if it still does it. All right, so plugged in the used cluster in. It literally just one connector, but yeah, let's see. Well, I said I wanted something close to 178, but I guess this thing has 211,000 kilometers on the odometer. So I guess this thing gained like an extra 40,000 kilometers on the cluster. But yeah, see if it still does it. That's weird. It's got an airbag light on. I will have to look at my footage to see if that airbag light was on before. So let me look at my footage. But so far so good, it's not resetting itself. Alright, so I looked at my footage. The airbag light was not on before. So I gotta see why that airbag light is on now. Especially after I swapped out the cluster. But yeah, anyways. It's been so far so good. It's not resetting itself, so it definitely is a bad cluster. And I'm gonna have to scan it and see what that airbag light is for. So yeah, not resetting itself. But I don't know if I mentioned this. If you put in a new cluster, you can transfer the odometer, but once if you put in a used one, that odometer number cannot change, if I remember correctly. So all you down in the comments are saying, hey, why don't you change the odometer reading? You can't physically do that on a used cluster, because once it starts counting, it started counting. But if you put in a new one and it starts from 0, then yeah, then you know, you start at 0. But on a new one, you can actually transfer the odometer and the maintenance over to the new cluster. But since the new cluster is discontinued, you can't get it. But yeah, anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and scan that airbag light and see what that airbag light is for. Okay, so I scanned it for code. So it's got an FCAN malfunction for under transmission, and then MICU lost communication with the SRS control unit. And so I asked my shop foreman about this, and he's seen this before, and it's because they gave me the wrong cluster for either the wrong year or the wrong model of this car, because I think the pin is slightly different depending on which model or which year. So we got to get the exact cluster for this car. So now I got to take it back out again, get parts to get another cluster, the exact year, exact model, because it might be like an EXL or, you know, touring. They're different, right? So yeah, so yeah, I guess we're waiting for another cluster. But other than that, plugging it in, it doesn't reset itself, so you know it was a bad cluster. So we're waiting for another cluster now. It might be a couple days again. So but yeah, anyways, I got a cool story, because my shop foreman was telling me this, because I asked him about this, and he's actually seen it before. He actually had one, a customer that brought in their, also an Odyssey, from another Honda dealership, because they couldn't figure it out, what was going on. So I guess, you know, the first question you got to ask the customer is like, what did they do, right? And of course they said they put in the cluster, and they were getting that same airbag light. And I guess he was looking around, you know, wiring diagrams, and I guess the circuit for the airbag, for the circuit on the cluster for the airbag is different than the circuit that was on the car, If I can remember, if I can just repeat what he said to me, I don't know. Yeah, he figured it out. So apparently, the cluster was the year was different. So it was just off by one pin on the connector, and it didn't match the connector from the car onto the cluster. So that was causing the airbag light on. So which is what I'm having here, because the cluster they gave me from it was from 2006, and this car is a 2007. So yeah. So now we're waiting for another cluster. That's the whole story about the what my shop foreman told me. So I kind of had the same situation where you know, when I was at Hyundai, it was a Sonata that a body shop brought to us, and they want us to put a used electronic power steering, which is the part of like the whole steering column with the control unit and everything on it, because warranty, or not warranty, insurance, which we only have one insurance company here in BC, they like to cut costs whatever they can, right? So they make us use parts. Actually, there was one time they brought us a half cut of a car, and we just took all the parts from that one to help fix a new car, because it's, you know, cheaper that way. But yeah, they gave us a used part to put in for the power steering. I put it in, connected it, and then it's like no communication to the electronic power steering. So same power steering, but the connector is different. Just, you know, between the years, the pins were different for the communication wires on that pin. So you got to take that thing all out again. So anyways, yeah, that was just back at Hyundai. All right, we are back. So I put in the second used cluster in. Yeah, there's the original one. Just to show you, looks like all the warning lights are on the dash there. This thing has 236,000 kilometers. So just to show you that the resetting issue is gone, and also the issue with the airbag light on the first used cluster is gone as well. The only thing left is, since we can't get a new one, we can't transfer the odometer reading over to the new one. So what we got to do is we get one of these stickers and we stick it on the door jamb. So we put the original odometer reading on the original odometer, and then put the date, and then what I'm going to do is I'll write the used odometer reading as I put it in. So, you know, if the customer decides to sell the car, then there's this, and also the invoice on the invoice. So yeah, that way if they decide if the customer decides to sell the car, there's no discrepancy on what the mileage and stuff is. So yeah, so that's pretty much it for the video. The only question left is, did that loose battery terminal cause this? Well, I have no proof. There's no way of proving that because of the loose battery terminal caused this issue. But I don't know. I watched him, like, you know, you guys watch Scanner Danner, right? He had like an RV where, you know, they were disconnecting and reconnecting the battery terminals or something, and then it fried the PCM, and then it caused it to no start or something. That was a video a while back ago, but there's no way of proving it. So you can't you know, claim that as you know, because of the company who take care of your RV or something. So same thing here. I can't prove that because of the loose battery terminal caused the issue with the, you know, gauge cluster to keep resetting, because, you know, because when it resets, my first thought was, oh yeah, it's got a bad alternator, because when you got a bad alternator, your voltage drops low, like pretty low for the instrument gauge cluster to completely cut out, and sometimes they come back. Yeah, so that was my initial thought of what was going on. But after I tightened the battery terminal, checked the charging system, they were both good. So now we just got a bad gauge cluster. So yeah, anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time, man. It still hasn't reset itself, so we know it's fixed.